Welcome to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Shelton from Old Dominion University Police Department. He is in his 38th year in law enforcement, but has 43 years experience in public safety. So really excited for this conversation. Welcome to the show, Chief Shelton. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, Paige, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. No, I appreciate your time and coming on here. I was hoping you could give us a little bit of background. 43 years in public safety is a long time. So what got you interested in this career and maybe what did those 43 years look like?
Yeah, so it doesn't seem like a long time.
Mhm.
It literally goes by at the blink of an eye. And but the funny part of that is I actually got into public safety by accident.
Mm,
I came out of high school. I was headed on a path, following in my father's first footsteps, who was a civil engineer, and I was headed into the architectural engineer world. And I happened to live with a roommate who volunteered at a rescue squad in Virginia, and he kept after me to come with him. I wanted nothing to do with it. I had no knowledge of it at all. And one evening, I just decided, well, he's going to keep asking me, so I'm going to go.
mhm,
And the very first call we went on was the very first time in my life that I witnessed an horrific, tragic event involving a vehicle and a child.
mm,
And when that event ended, and unfortunately the loss of a child, I was like, I, I want nothing to do with this. I want take me back. And on the way back, as luck would have it, they got a call for someone who was in labor.
mm.
So they just had to pick her up, take her to the hospital real quick, and then they would get me back so I could leave. Um, Again, I guess fate intervened because as we picked this young mom up, we didn't make it to the hospital. And in the back of the ambulance, she delivered her first child. And so I went from, in the span of about an hour, went from the loss of a child to the birth of a child. And I left there thinking, I want to do something for my community, see what they're doing. I want to be a part of this. And that's how I started in public safety. Became a paramedic, ended up moving to the jurisdiction in Virginia that I would ultimately start my first police department. It just evolved into I wanted to do more within our communities, and I felt the police department was what the way to do that. So I became a police officer in 1987, and I'm still here.
I I really appreciate that story. I think that you reminded, and it's not that I needed reminding, but I think that it's a really nice reminder that there's always bad and there's always good. And for you to have that in such a short period of time of being like, wow, this was so traumatic, but then also this moment was really beautiful and I felt like I helped this person. And then that being your driving force to now have 43 years experience in this career path, I think is really amazing. And I appreciate your story. I wanted to ask you because, you said a little bit, I mean, I kind of got a little grasp on your why. But I understand that maybe whys change over time and throughout your career. In the context of your career, what has been that driving force? What has been that why for you?
Yeah, I agree. So, I think life changes your why. So when I started in public safety, I was not married, didn't have children. And so my why was focused on learning everything I could learn to be that person that when I got the call and I was there, and you think about that even as a paramedic, we respond to people when they're having what could be their worst moment
Mhm.
and wanting to be there to make a difference.
Yeah.
And and that was my why. I wanted to be able to make a difference. The way it evolved is sometimes I couldn't do anything to change the outcome. It didn't matter how much I knew or how hard I tried, I couldn't change the outcome. But then my why evolved into um, trying to understand from the victim standpoint, from the affected family members, what they're going through, how they're feeling. But what I didn't realize is that when I did start to have a family, I did get married, I did have kids, my why began to change again.
Mm,
So now it's all about your family, your kids, and then trying to balance those whys. And in public safety, that can create a significant amount of stress, hardship on the families, because on one hand, you want to focus to help everybody else, but on the other hand, your family may see it as, why aren't you putting the same amount of focus here?
mm,
And then stress begins to kind of filter into that equation.
yeah. I think that you guys do a really good job of helping other people, and then sometimes maybe not the best of helping yourself because there is that selflessness in this career. And I've had a lot of conversations about this, about how your life starts to suffer because you are in such a, servant mentality of wanting to help everybody else. I really thought that it was a unique perspective for you to say, that throughout your career it changed, but there was a moment in your career where you realized that no matter what you did, maybe you couldn't change the outcome, but you could have the empathy and the emotional intelligence to be able to relate to the people who are going through this situation. And that is a conversation that I've had recently where there's always this question mark of how do you teach that? How do you teach emotional intelligence? How do you teach empathy, especially to someone who's maybe younger in the career who doesn't have that life experience and doesn't understand what these people are going through and the impact that having maybe that sense of like guardedness or like, you almost become desensitized to things because it's what you do so often that you don't have that ability to connect with the individuals who are in those situations. Do you think you just learned that on your own, or is there a way that you think that that sense of empathy can be taught?
I I think it can be taught, and you used a word that I use often is and it's desensitized.
Mm,
And I think that's true across a broad spectrum. If you look in the world today, I think uh, people, especially young people, are so inundated with information that they become desensitized to things, and maybe they're a little more difficult to reach. And it depends on where that information is coming from, but they are also the people that we're hiring. So when I go to talk to new officers today, I have to do it with the understanding that if you go back to when I started, we didn't have this information flow coming into us the way we do today. You had typically two or three news stations you were picking your news up off of. No 24-hour, no internet, no cell phones. Yes, I'm that old. None of that. But when I came in, it was you have to be tough. You can't show emotion. You can't seek help. You get hurt. Injuries were easy. Somebody gets hurt, you can see it, feel it, touch it. You know what you have to do to fix it. Maybe it's fixed, maybe it's not, but there's an outcome. You can see it.
yeah.
When we're injured internally, especially if you're dealing with mental health issues, if you're dealing with spiritual issues, financial issues, the things that you can't see, the stress, we didn't know how to fix it. So I guess the long way around to get to your answer is, can you teach it? Can you talk to people? And I think you can. And one of the things that I do with my new officers is I come in and start talking to them day one.
Hmm.
And it's, okay, let's just get something out of the gate right now. I've made a lot of mistakes in my careers, in my paramedic career, my first law enforcement career, my current law enforcement career. I've made mistakes. I've made mistakes in my families. I've made mistakes in life, but you have to be able to recover from that. But you also have to be able to recognize that it's happening.
Yeah.
Um, Years ago, talking about teaching it, and this was an accident. My SWAT team members, we had been going 24/7, it felt like for months,
Mm.
dealing with the worst in the community. And it was a Halloween night, and we had an event in town called the Ghost Walk. It was an annual event that thousands of people came to in our town in Hampton Roads. And I got the call that we needed to go help do bicycle patrols for the Ghost Walk, and nobody wanted to do it. They were exhausted, and all we had been dealing with for months was the worst areas and people, which is a small percentage in our community. But I had them get out there, and we started working it.
Mm.
What happened is people going by would say, "Hey, it's good to see you. We really love you guys. Hey, come over here. We have apple cider. Hey, get off that bike and have some apple cider." And I started riding around and seeing my officers all of a sudden engaging
Mm.
and being talked to and completely letting their guards down. And when it was over with, they said, that's the best thing that could have happened because it let us get out of the space that we were in, see how the community felt. And many people would come after that and tell me how they told their spouses, they told their families what happened. And
Mm.
it led into conversations about things that they were dealing with personally and changed the way they looked at things. So, can you teach it? You can talk about it, but unless you experience it, I think that's one of those things that's really hard to grasp until you have that aha moment.
Yeah. I love that story because I think it goes back to what you said in the beginning. There's going to be so many hard things. And for you guys, especially, you're going through, I know when you and I talked offline, you've been through hundreds and hundreds of critical incidences. And if you don't break that up, if you don't have the opposite to it, if you don't have the joy and the appreciation and the beauty of the community and of life, then I can only imagine how those hundreds of critical incidents would wear on you over time and would impact your health, your family, all the things. And so to have the contrast to that, I think is so important. And we've talked a little bit about, just getting, like you said, getting the officers out there to engage with the community in a positive way, hearing and even if we don't, because I don't think that you guys go out there for the recognition, right? You want to help people. It's not like you're like, I'm going to be a police officer so that I'm recognized. I don't think that anyone says that, or maybe I'm sure there's someone who said it at some point, but I don't think the majority of people would go out and say that. And so I think human nature, it feels good to have someone say thank you. It feels good to have someone recognize you for the job that you do and tell you that you're doing a good job. And so I love that story of having a group of your team who is burnt out to be rejuvenated through positive experiences within the community.
And that also translates over into so as my career moves along, and for most police officers that move up in rank, there's a saying in the special operations world that as a special operations operator, you're only concerned about your 3 foot world. It's those things right around you that are that threat or that you need to deal with. But then as you start to move up in rank, your world starts to expand. And so when you get up to become, the higher leadership at the captain, assistant chief, chief level, that recognition you need to take that and go down and recognize those individuals that work with you.
Yeah.
And you will never hear me say work for me.
Hmm.
Nobody works for me. We're in this together, and they work with me. And you need to they do need that recognition. They need to know that they're recognized by their leadership, by their communities. And recently we had a big event involving wellness where we did a formal gala for all of the first responders in Hampton Roads and had several hundred show up just to recognize what they're doing in their communities.
Yeah. I think that, to your point, words matter. And I think sometimes you need people to like maybe point things out. And I appreciate the shift in focus of saying we are a team and we work together. You don't work under me, you don't work for me, you work with me. You know, we are a team, we are a quote unquote family unit that we're trying to create here within the organization. I think words matter, and I would imagine that that empowers people and it makes them feel valued and important. And then therefore, they want to do a better job with you because of that.
Absolutely, and it definitely, and I've seen it. It energizes people
Hmm.
and makes them um, ready to go out for the next thing.
Hmm.
And that could be anything from a call for service to a community event. But it has an impact that you matter.
Yeah.
And I think that's important in leadership to make sure that, we are vulnerable as leaders. We are transparent as much as we can be in what we're doing. We have to build that trust with with our hearts, show them uh, that they matter, and build those relationships, because without that, you just can't be successful as a team.
I think that authenticity and vulnerability is challenging for a
It
lot of people.
absolutely
And
is.
it's scary. It took me a really long time to let down my guard and my walls and to have that sense of vulnerability and authenticity. And it wasn't that I was trying to be unauthentic, but I think that showcasing who you are is scary sometimes, because then you're opening yourself up to all of the things, and one of the things that I learned, and maybe you've heard this before, but I heard that when you are guarded, right, and you're trying to protect yourself from the negative stuff, you're also blocking out the good stuff. You
It's a
know,
wall. You
yeah,
build a wall.
and you don't get to choose. You don't get, like, if you're putting up that wall, like, you're blocking out everything. And so for me, it took me a long time to soften. And it was through working on myself and being able to have that confidence and that courage to let everything down and know that, yeah, I might get some negative things. Like there might be some people who don't like who I am. You're never gonna have 100% of people in the world that love you. And I think that that was a hard reality that I had to come to terms with because I always, growing up was that people pleaser and I wanted everyone to love me. And if someone didn't like me, it was like something's wrong with me. And it was really hard for me to accept that hard truth that no matter how great you are, not everyone is gonna like you or appreciate you or love you. And I had to be okay with that because I was also letting all the good stuff in. So with all the bad stuff or negative stuff, I was also letting the good stuff in. And that was hard to kind of bury your heart out to everyone. But I think it's been the most um um I don't know what word I want to say. It's been the best thing that I have done personally. Um, and it has built so many more connections with people because I think that people are never ever going to relate to you or connect with you if you're not showing them who you are and talking to them about the things that you've gone through. It's so unrelatable to go up to someone who has those walls up and is like, I'm good. Nothing affects me. Like everything is perfect. And you're like, wow, okay, I don't want to talk to that person because I can't relate to that at all, you know? So I
Yeah.
felt some of the best connections from being able to let that guard down.
So I could probably ask you this question, and that is, if you think back to the first time you had an encounter with a police officer,
Hmm.
you were probably feeling some anxiety
Hmm.
because you were seeing an officer in uniform, you're seeing a badge, and maybe like wide-eyed, like what's happening here. But today, you have met and talked with a whole lot of police officers, and it's changed your perspective of who we are.
Hmm.
And I talk about this when I go out and talk in public. One of the worst things I hate is to be behind a podium because it's a barrier, it's a wall.
Hmm.
And I already wear a wall. In the community today, this uniform is a barrier, and they don't know who the person is inside the uniform. And, when I was going through my process to be in this position as the chief of police, I remember I was in a large group setting with the community, and one of the young ladies asked a question about the police and how come the police are so hard to talk to and so hard to get along with. And I walked over, I took a chair, I pulled it out, and I sat right next to her in a room of about 100 people. And I said, just look at me for a minute and focus right here. Hi, my name's Garrett. What's your name? And we had this conversation for a couple of minutes, and you saw her whole demeanor shift
Hmm.
and relax. And it's being able to have that vulnerable moment to embrace the negativity as much as you embrace the positivity because you're going to get them both.
Yeah.
But recognize that you can make a difference. You can go one person at a time and show that you can be that person that's approachable, that you can talk to, that will protect you, that isn't a, someone behind a uniform that automatically you're on the defensive with. And it takes moments like that just to one at a time, just to work through with people, whether it's the officers that work with you, or it's the community, or it's just strangers completely separate out of what I do.
I really like the one at a time because I think that the small steps lead to big impact, right? And that can translate across a lot of different things. And sometimes if you walk into a situation and say, I'm going to change everybody all at once, or I'm going to make this big impact all at once, and then it doesn't happen in that way, it can be um, discouraging, right? Because you're like, wow, like I couldn't do it all at once. But those small impacts, one interaction at a time, one person at a time, one step at a time, then, it's that like old adage, like the best way to eat an elephant is,
One bite at
one
a
bite
time.
at a time. And so I really, really like that because I do believe that small steps over time create long lasting impact. I actually had a conversation recently, and to your point, and I wanted to kind of point this out, that wall or that barrier. I had another person in leadership say, get out of your car. Like when you pull up to someone, you have that armor, that barrier, and people don't feel like they can talk to you. And so having those opportunities to get out of your car, walk up to someone, like have those conversations is one of those small steps that can be made.
It is, and you have to be approachable, and
Mm.
you have to be willing to engage and engage in positive ways. I'll never forget many years ago a traffic stop I made because the person had pulled away from a gas pump and their gas cap was just hanging off the side of the car dangling. And I thought, well, let me just pull them over real quick and put the gas cap back on. And when I pulled them over, as soon as I was walking up to the car, immediately the person was on the defensive, started yelling at me. I didn't do anything. And I just stood there and let it go for a minute. And they looked at me and said, "What'd you even stop me for?" And I walked back. I took the gas cap, I put it back on the car, shut the gas cap cover, and I came back and I just said, "I wanted to let you know your gas cap was off." And the whole conversation changed. And then we had like a 10-minute conversation about nothing to do with anything other than um, that wasn't the expectation.
Yeah.
And so I think expectations play into that a lot. If you have predeceived, if you're predisposed to certain expectations, unless you're willing to be vulnerable and have a conversation and talk with people or connect with people, you'll never change those expectations.
Yeah. I want to ask you how you have taken your experiences because I know, like we said before, you've seen a lot, you've been through a lot. I know that we talked a little offline about how the stress can impact you. It can impact your physical health, it can impact your wellness at home. What are maybe some of the things that you have gone through where you have seen this job impact you personally, and how do you share those stories with your organization, being vulnerable and teaching them about these things so that they can be more proactive and take care of themselves?
So I think one of the probably the most impactful thing that has happened in my career to me, especially when it comes to wellness, um, the stress of this job and what you encounter on a daily basis um, can impact you personally, can impact your families. I've been through a couple of marriages. I have wonderful kids that I stay very engaged with. They are part of my why.
Mm.
Um, but what happened to me, and thankfully, my previous agency, we were required to do a physical. We tried wellness programs. The lack of trust within the agency kind of pushed that away. It never took off, but we had to do a physical every year. And most people didn't like having to go do that every year, even. Thankfully, in 2009, I was in physically, I was in the best shape of my life. I'd been um, on the SWAT team now for the better part of 12 or 13 years. We worked out constantly. We ran, we biked, we aerobically and physically, we were in the best shape that we could be in. But what I didn't know was what the stress was causing to me inside.
Mm.
And I got a call after that physical, and my glucose was too high, way too high. Long story short, I ended up going to a specialist, and I was diagnosed with diabetes. Now, at this point, my endocrinologist, my doctor looks at me and goes, "How many people in your family have it?" And I'm like, "Zero."
Mm.
And he looked at me and said, "That's not possible. You're not overweight. You're not out of shape. You're not, your diet isn't, all these things that didn't fit the mold for what I was." And I was clearly that, but all I was hearing was, "I just got a death sentence."
Mm.
You go back, I was a paramedic. I saw what people with diabetes starting to lose limbs, starting to deteriorate. I saw a death sentence at the I will tell you, it was like listening to an episode of Charlie Brown and the adults talking. It was this wah, 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 and I wasn't hearing what was being said. It was sometime after that. that I heard a seminar of an officer who was talking about diabetes. And he talked about how stress physiologically changed his ability to manage sugar. He became a diabetic. And I'm hearing all of this, and I started to research it, started to look into it. Ultimately, I end up with my endocrinologist, and I'm like, let me tell you why. I did a class, and I was talking about my diabetes in the class and what stress does. And I said, there's a class of, there was probably 100 people in there. And I said, if anybody in the group is willing, because if it has to do with wellness and law enforcement, we protect that because we don't want to look weak. If anybody's willing, I have diabetes. If you're willing to raise your hand, if you have diabetes, will you raise your hand? And about half the class raised their hand,
Wow.
either diabetic or pre-diabetic.
Yeah.
And what we know is the stress on us because we're constantly at a state of awareness. When we put the uniform on, especially with what's going on in the world, when we come out of the house, we're in this state of awareness and we stay there and never give our bodies a chance. So when I talk to new officers, current officers, my dispatchers who are under at times more stress than the police officers are, I talk about you have to take care of yourself. You need to go see someone. You need to follow this. You need to get the stress down. You need to find another path forward. And I'm very open about my journey over the past 15 years with diabetes. And today, I don't see it as a death sentence.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. And I think that a lot of people don't understand what stress can do to the body. And I know that you shared with me that this is something that now you are open to talking to people about because you want people to take care of themselves, right? You want them to understand what this can do, and then what are those steps that you can take to be able to offload some of that stress and try to be a little bit more preventative and like reducing your risk. We're never ever gonna eliminate these things, right? But it's like, how can, and I believe there's three steps to growth and three steps to change. And I talk about this a lot, but one I think is awareness. The first step is being aware that these things can happen and how they happen and why they happen. Then the second step is education, right? How can we get in front of it? What are the resources and tools that we can utilize to try to reduce that risk a little bit and maybe bring you back to baseline as quickly as possible throughout your career. And then the third one is action. How can you actually take advantage of those things and implement those things into your life? And so I know when we talked a little bit, and I've had this conversation with a lot of leaders across the country, it's how do we, after there's awareness, after there's education and communication about these things, how do you get people to then take action for themselves and take advantage of the resources that are being provided for them?
So that's been a challenge my entire career.
Mm,
And I've watched a couple of your other podcasts, and I see the Chiefs talking about, early on, I think one of them even made the comment, we use it in baseball, where I umpire Little League Baseball. It's like rub a little dirt on it and keep going.
mhm.
Um, you know, you don't talk about it. It was forbidden. It make you look weak. There was a stigmatism attached to it. Um, what we have to do is take that away and be so from a leadership standpoint, you can't just go, here's what we're going to do. You're going to go start seeing a mental health provider twice a year, whether you want to or not. That has never worked, and it will never ever work. Locally, when a tragic or a bad event happens, we have phenomenal critical incident stress debriefers, peer debriefers, that we have a network of them all over Hampton Roads that we're able to, in Virginia, that we're able to bring in the moment and walk and talk through that. And then, but there has to be a next step because you can't do that once or twice and then expect, okay, everything's fixed. We put a Band-Aid on it, we're good to go.
Right.
So one of the things that we're doing here, which will be one of the first in the Commonwealth of Virginia, there's a couple other agencies that have clinicians that work there, but Ultimate University was able to obtain a national grant. And it's a 5-year grant that is going to allow us to start up a degree program here that is specifically towards mental health and first responders.
Mhm.
And it's going to be a clinician degree. But in that, we're going to allow there's 3 agencies, a fire department, 2 police departments in Hampton Roads in Virginia that are going to allow interns to be embedded. So these are like medical doctor interns going into a hospital. They're going to be embedded into the police department. So they're here. You
Mhm.
get to know them. You get to just have everyday conversations with them. They get to come have lunch with you or be involved in what everybody else is doing so that, hey, I want to talk with you. Hey, you got a minute? Or build that relationship and that trust to be able to have those conversations and have it available in house. And then we want to grow that out of this program throughout the Commonwealth. And, I think once we do that and we start to eat that elephant one bite at a time, there is an agency that is near me that I've talked to the chief several times that has a professional embedded psychologist within their agency. And he put it in the perspective of officer involved shootings. It used to be before this, an officer involved in a shooting, it could take 4 to 6 months to get them back on the street where they were comfortable with them being back on the street. Since they hired and have inside their agency a clinical psychologist that the officers trust and they work with them from the beginning, they have turned that down to 4 to 6 weeks and not months.
Wow.
And it's not until they feel that their mental well-being
Hmm.
is in a place to do that. So if you look at it from a stress level, if you go 4 to 6 months, that stress level is staying up here. But as you do these programs and we start to build on them, you're getting them back down to their base level or
Yeah.
closer to it, which in the long run keeps them healthier. Um, we don't have to worry as much about one of the highest um, casualties of law enforcement is suicide.
Hmm.
And I've seen too much of that in my community. And we've got to do as much as we need to take care of the community, we have got to take care of the people that we work with every day who the community entrusts to take care of them.
Yeah. Those statistics that you shared, those success metrics are huge. 4 months down to 4 weeks, that's a huge improvement. You said a few times, trust. Do you think that that's the key to this whole thing is having people within the organization that are trusted to break the stigma so that people are actually utilizing the resources?
Yeah, so I think I teach a leadership class here, and one of the big concepts we talk about is, and we I think the coined phrase today is servant leadership. Let's
Mhm.
just take the servant away for a minute. Um, it's relationships. If you have a positive relationship at home, it's because you're trusted because you use your heart, because you build those relationships, because you're vulnerable. And once you do that, then you're able to build that relationship closer and have those good conversations, have those difficult conversations, and work in your personal relationship. Well, why can't we do that in our workplace?
Mhm.
So it is. It's about building those relationships to gain that trust and build an environment where it's not only safe, but it's a place where you want to go to feel better, to talk through things, to get the help that you need, because it's not only going to help you at work, it is also going to translate into your personal life.
And you had said this earlier, and I wanted to circle back to this because I think this is a really important note. You said that when there's a physical injury, it's tangible, right? Like you can see it, you can feel it. And so people are on board with, like, okay, I have an injury, and therefore I need to go to a professional to make sure that I'm good to go. And there might be a process, a time that it takes for you to heal that injury. And everyone understands this, right? And everyone is on board with this, and there's no stigma associated with that. I think that if we can start viewing mental wellness in the same way and trying to relate it to tangible things, because you said you can't see it, right? There's a lot of like hiding. You can't see if someone's under, I mean, there's maybe some things that manifest on the surface for sure if you're under a lot of stress or whatever that may be. But I think if you can have that tangibility of like, this is impacting your relationship at home. That's tangible for you to feel that and see that. This is affecting your finances. That is tangible. And so if you can maybe start to see, hey, there is some tangibility to these things. And so just like you would go to a doctor to help with a physical injury, there are professionals that can help you, and there's resources and things that you can do to help on the mental side of things as well.
And absolutely. And it's unfortunate that the stigma that has been around mental health for most of my life, not just in my career, is such that people don't want to talk about it.
Hmm.
Even within their own families, if somebody's suffering from mental health issues, people you don't want to talk about it. But especially in the public safety profession. And unfortunately, sometimes when it truly becomes tangible is when a life is taken because of it.
Yeah.
And then I wish I would have known or wish we could have done something. Well, that's where we are now. And that starts the day a new employee walks through the door. That's the day you start doing something about it. Before they take their first class in the academy, that's the day you start having the conversation. And not only that, I go back to my SWAT days again. I wouldn't bring a new member on the SWAT team until I interviewed their family.
Mm,
And we didn't talk about how they were as a police officer. We talked about how are things at home?
yeah.
What do you all do to have fun? And if I felt that there was any issue, then I may not, there were times I didn't bring people onto the team because that was only going to exacerbate what was happening.
Wow.
But we've got to open the doors to this. I'll tell you right now, with what I've seen in my career, there's plenty I wish I could forget. And if anybody's suffering from, mental health issues, it is those of us who have seen the things that we have seen. You can't just package it up and it doesn't come out.
Yeah.
And there are still cases today that I talk about that will still bring tears to my eyes.
I find it really powerful that coming from an environment that you came from where there was so much stigma and you were not allowed to talk about these things and you were not allowed to show emotions, and it was an expectation to shove these things down and to posture up and keep going, that you have evolved so much in your career and as a leader to recognize that and to come out the other side with so much empathy and vulnerability to now talk about that so that you can influence the younger generation through your challenging experiences. And I say this so much because I just believe it to be true that our hardest and most challenging times are our greatest opportunity for growth and to help other people. There's no way that if you didn't go through the things that you went through, that you would be as passionate as you are now to be a leader that helps other people through those hard times, right? You wouldn't have had that perspective of the family if you didn't also go through hard times in your own personal life. And so I appreciate you having that adaptability because I think that there's some people who don't, that just keep going in that same lane of like, this is how we've always done it and I'm gonna stay hard forever. But for you to come out the other end and be like, you know what, I want to make a difference because I know how hard it was for me.
And I wish I had known this when I first started,
And on
because
that,
while there would have been plenty of hard things still ahead, it wouldn't have been as hard a road as it has been. And I wouldn't trade any of that because it did. You're correct. I'm very passionate about taking care of yourself because there's going to come a day that somebody else is going to be sitting in this seat and they may not even be a police officer yet. And we have to get to a place where we're able to not only recruit the best talent, but engage them in such a way that we take care of them in every aspect, including their well-being, so that they are successful moving forward and they continue to carry that message ahead and have those successes.
I'm gonna pause here just for a moment and I'll edit this, but I have a leaf blower. Can you hear that? It's quite
Uh,
loud. No, you can't hear it? Okay.
uh,
Okay. Well, then I will cut and I will resume. On that same note, I do want to hear your words of wisdom for the younger generation. I know that you've seen a lot, you've experienced a lot, and you don't want people to have to experience those same things, even though I think some things are an inevitability. Like you can't control the things that you see on the job, right? You can't control the outcomes. Sometimes we talked about that a little bit, but in the context of wellness, what are some words of wisdom that you would share with someone who's earlier in their career? Maybe something that you did wish you would have known earlier or something that has helped you along the way.
yeah, I think the first thing will always be find your why.
Mm.
And and maybe you think this is it, maybe it is, and maybe it isn't. But don't be afraid if you get down the road, weeks, months, or even years later, and you figure that, this, I don't know that this is my why. Don't be afraid to step away from it. It's not a failure to put forth the effort that you need to, and then step away from something. And it's also not a failure to say, I need to talk with someone, I need help. And it could be any of the multiple things in wellness. And I'm talking about the well being of the person. And whether that's, your physical well being, it's your mental health, it's your financial, spiritual, your family life, your work life, the balances. Um, don't be afraid to ask for help and find your other than work why. Find another why. Maybe that's family. For me, it's my family and it's my passion for Little League baseball and umpiring. Um, it's you've got to have outlets. You have to be able to recognize if things aren't going the way that you maybe perceive they would go, and you have to be willing to hear if somebody comes up to you. And if somebody comes up and asks you, "Hey, are you okay?" Take a minute and self-reflect. In my leadership class, one of the things I have my students do is called a reflected best self. You reach out to 20 people and you ask one question. You ask them to finish this sentence. I am at my best when, and finish the sentence. Before you get the responses back, you answer the question and jot down, I'm at my best when, and jot down a bunch of things. Almost every single time when I get the response back from my students when they write their findings, they'll go, this was the most I've been experienced. Yes, I knew about this, but I didn't know that I was seen through other people's eyes like this. Don't be afraid to see yourself through the eyes of others, to self reflect, to have hard conversations, to find common ground, to seek help when you need it, to take care of yourself, to take care of those around you. That should be your priority. If you do all that, this career will be a whole lot easier than it was for me.
I love those words of wisdom. I appreciate your time so much. Thank you for coming on here and spending an hour with me. All I can say is thank you.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure.
Of course.